performer and storyteller, and today I want to talk about storytelling in the workplace. Now, I understand that storytelling is kind of a buzzword, and we talk about it a lot when we talk about marketing or advertising and like the brand story and making designs and making ads, whatever, that tell the brand story. So it's not a particularly new concept. However, I want to approach it from a slightly different angle. And I'm looking at it as how companies as a whole function, and how storytelling and the understanding of stories themselves and how they function and how storytelling works can be applied to understand a lot of different things about the workplace and how a company is functioning. Let's get started. The first thing that I want to clarify is that when I talk about storytelling, I'm talking about good storytelling. Good storytelling for me is the ability to craft different elements into a narrative arc that is cohesive, consistent, and comprehensible. If it's not these three things, then it's not functioning as a story. Let's remember, storytelling is a two-way interaction. There are a storyteller or storytellers, and there are receivers. And the receivers have to be able to make sense of what the story is trying to tell them, what the meaning of the story is, because stories are how we understand ourselves as people, as how we understand others. It's how we make sense of what's going on, our place in it. And what stories also do is they take concepts and ideas and they wrap it up in something that looks different, but it still teaches us that thing. And so comprehensible in that a story, if it's not understandable to the receiver, then it's not good storytelling. If it's not consistent, right? So this is like kind of where, it's like, and what to do, how could he, and then he woke up and everything was fine. It's just like, it's not consistent. You establish certain rules as part of the storytelling process, and if you break those rules, it's not good storytelling, right? I'm not talking about plot twists, because good plot twists are not inconsistent at all, in the sense that a good plot twist, you can look back and be like, if I was looking for it, I would have seen it coming, right? There's always those hints and those foreshadowings and all of that. And finally, cohesive, in that it has to hold together, right? Good storytelling is when every single element of the story is moving the story forwards, right? If you go off on a tangent or you have like a conversation which is not really relevant, so you're just like, that's interesting, but if it's not necessary to bring the story forward, then it's not good storytelling. So when I'm talking about storytelling, I'm talking about good storytelling. So there are three main areas that I want to talk about in terms of how storytelling and the understanding of stories can potentially be applied to the workplace. The first is understanding the story of the company. And this is not the story that you tell customers or users. It is the whole story as a whole. It is what the employees are telling their friends and what they're telling each other and what they're telling their bosses and what the bosses are telling each other and their friends and their employees. And it's this whole system of stories that is being passed around. It is how the stories of emails, it is how stories are told in meetings, it is how, it is the whole culture and context, it is the world building of the company as a story and the little mini stories that make it up. And if you find, for example, that the overall, what you say about the company is not what the employees are telling each other, then there's a disconnect, and this can lead to serious issues in the company, in the workplace, particularly. And if there, and if there are certain things or promises that you make to the users, but the employees tell their friends something else, right? Or if the bosses are saying something else in their personal life, or whatever it have you, if there's some disconnect in the story, and this is not about controlling the narrative or being like, you have to say this, not at all. It's more about understanding, what are people saying? What's the overall story? What are the mini stories that are making it up? And if it's not cohesive, consistent, and comprehensible, what's wrong? Where are the elements? What are the elements that are not in place? Where is the storytelling not functioning? The second way that storytelling can be applied in the workplace is teamwork, right? teams have to work together to solve problems. And imagine if there's a precedent, of course, with this, with like team retreats, and hiring maybe improv or theater people to come in and do a session on improv exercises and and collaboration and all of that. But what could be more collaborative than sitting around a table and telling a story together? A story which is cohesive, consistent, and comprehensible. So being able to take the ideas of others and bring it forward in a way that the story is advancing, in a way that is consistent with what all the other contributions have added at that point. Like one of the things, for example, that I'm working on now is a collaborative storytelling game, which does just this. And the act of telling stories with other people can be really frustrating because you want to take it in one way, but you have to work with the others. But it's also, you find that the ideas that you come up with together are so much richer than the ideas you come up on your own. And so just storytelling as an exercise can be really interesting for teams. And the third way in which storytelling can be applied in the workplace is in leadership. And this is particularly true for inclusive leaders, for leaders working in intercultural contexts or working abroad, though it can be also applicable for just people working abroad generally, but particularly for leaders in the sense that being able to understand the employees and how they see themselves in their own story, the roles that they see themselves taking on, the archetypes that they see themselves taking on, and the archetypes that they play in the workplace and the company, and to be able to help them see how their archetype and their own image, how it fits and can be evolved and grown within the story of the company. So as a tool for self-growth and for career growth and people management, it's incredibly useful to be able to articulate that, this person is seeing themselves in this archetype, but in the team they're playing this archetype, and maybe they want to be here. And so what are the storytelling elements? What are the stages of the hero's journey, so to speak, that they need to go through in order to reach this new archetype or this new level of themselves, this character development, right? So if we think almost of the process of career growth as character development, how does that allow us to kind of step back a little bit and look at it from a place, because sometimes it can be really, when you're really close to it, it can be very personal, and if you're not getting the exact feedback that you want, it can be really frustrating. But to be able to step back of it and look at it as a story, as character development, as the growth of this character in this story of this company, it can be a really, really interesting exercise and a way of getting a new perspective and moving on. And in terms of working abroad, it's really interesting because what you understand when you go abroad is that there are, archetypes and stories that we draw from are different in different cultures. And so, if you go abroad and you are trying to use your own archetypes and your own cultural stories and myths and narratives, maybe it doesn't work. And so, or it just doesn't quite match, or maybe there are certain issues in communication because you're trying to refer to storytelling elements that are drawing upon your own cultural narratives, and in that place they just don't exist, or they have different cultural narratives. And so to be able to sort of understand different cultural myths and different cultural references and archetypes, and then it gives you a real superpower, actually, to be able to communicate with people in different cultures and contexts in a way that is meaningful to them. So these are the three areas in which storytelling can be applied in the workplace. Though overall, I think generally the ability to understand stories as a tool for making meaning and understanding journeys and belongings and identities and character development is hugely beneficial in all aspects. The final takeaway of this video is that when you're working with storytelling in the workplace, but just generally, is that if the storytelling is cohesive, consistent, and comprehensible, then it's good storytelling. If it's not, you need to look at your story one more time. Thank you very much. See you next time. Bye-bye.